Okay. All right. Well, it took a little while, but hi, guys. Here I am, Kurt Tarnowski, publisher of Yankee Team News, coming to you on this Monday, August 10th, the year of our Lord 2026, from the fabulous Parkway Diner in Stamford, Connecticut. So, boy, oh boy, um, I've been listening to Reese on the radio give a very sharp, pointed analysis of all that was happening with the fatal accident and a woman named Melissa Ramirez. I will get to that in a moment. But first, I need to remind you subscribe, like, share, tell all your friends, spread the good word. We definitely could use more subscribers. And let's see here, tell Tong time. Boy, how much longer can you keep lying, Mr. Tong? That's what I'd like to know. And speaking of lies, that's going to include the lies that have to be um, kept to cover up the election fraud going on in Connecticut, which is again with respect to Ms. Melissa Ramirez. We certainly don't know enough about this story, but I will go out on a limb and say that our erstwhile Secretary of State, Comrade Secretary Stephanie Thomas, has gone out of her way to confuse matters because she's she's accused us of wrong information and she has failed to produce the correct information. So it falls to us then to keep sorting this stuff out and making sense out of it. Now, one has to ask, this is a traffic accident. So why is Stephanie Thomas, the Secretary of State, getting involved? Because whoever the real Melissa Ramirez is, let's put it this way, there is a Melissa Ramirez out there somewhere who is an illegal alien, has a driver's license, is on the voter rolls, and has voted 3 times. All right. Is that Melissa Ramirez the same one that's been in the hospital following the accident? I say yes, but others will have to nail this down because you're going to just keep having Stephanie Thomas confusing and misleading people because that's what she does best. All right. Is there something else? The other thing I want to add to this is that Reese brought up another startling piece of information, and I'm shocked that more isn't being said about this. It turns out several weeks prior to this accident, okay, there was another case in Connecticut of a gentleman, a rather tortured name. I can't remember it now, only murdered if I try to say it. But turns out he's a native of Montenegro, which is north of Greece. And he apparently stole the identity of some man from the Netherlands in order to get into this country. So he succeeded in doing it. This dates back, by the way, to 1996. So the problem is that he got a driver's license, even though he was an illegal alien. Now, it's unclear what, if any, voting he has done. However, he was caught a few weeks ago. So you have this case now of a gentleman who may be on the voter rolls and is an illegal alien who has a driver's license living in Connecticut. And you've got a similar case now with Melissa Ramirez. So count them, not one, but 2, in close proximity in time to each other. 2 individuals who may well be illegal aliens and have voted illegally. Well, if there's 2, well, then there certainly needs to be more. So we should not be surprised that Stephanie Thomas is doing everything she can to divert, deny, deflect, and cover up as best she can. And I echo a sentiment that was expressed by Reese on the radio when he suggested that Stephanie Thomas's conduct certainly indicates that they're very concerned that something is going to, quote, come out from these events. And she might have something real to worry about. So, okay, Stephanie, any day now. And to add to that, there's a sidebar story that Reese brought up, which I think is worth repeating. There is a private detective who has been looking at a certain nonprofit organization that is said to be intimately involved with managing the voter rolls for the state of Connecticut. Now, quite frankly, there is no nonprofit that should have any business managing any voter roll information for the state of Connecticut. That is the job of the state of Connecticut. It's a sworn duty of the Secretary of State to ensure the integrity of the elections. To turn around and charge somebody else with it is basically an abdication of your duties. Okay, she'll deny it. She'll come up with excuses. She'll probably twist citation of some statute somewhere to justify what she's doing, but it ain't working. It ain't working. Okay, I need to get to the War on the Surveillance State Part 2. Now, I had mentioned before that, so last week's op-ed was Part 1 on this subject, and I think we're still kind of floating around sort of the same issues here, such as, for example, the emergency hearing in Milford, Connecticut, last week sometime. And see, I'm trying to remember if I talked about this last week. I'm not sure if I did. In any event, it was a despicable display of non-leadership by the mayor or first selectman of Milford. As the story goes, he was sitting there with earbuds and looking at his phone, ignoring each and every person that got up there to voice their concerns about these flock cameras. Well, at the end of the day, the town council voted 7-5 in favor of keeping the cameras, but the people of Milford are not going to let this stand. So I'm sure that they've gone back in their corner and plotting what kind of next move they're going to have to make in order to get rid of those cameras. Right. So that's kind of where that part sits. Still, there is this larger issue. Okay, you've got this other class of camera now called the Axon camera, which is considered like the flock cameras, but only on steroids. Yeah, and those have been spreading. I don't know how pervasive they are in Connecticut, but it's a problem. Now, back for a second to the flock cameras, there does seem to be growing pressure to get rid of them. Again, I cite that the town of Killingworth got rid of them. A number of cases where people have been chopping these cameras down. And now the latest is that Governor Lamont is trying to put a group together to figure out just how they're going to handle this. I have a clue. It might have something to do with the upcoming election, because this flock camera thing ain't going away and it's going to get worse. And by the way, I certainly will do my part to make sure that it gets worse, because, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many different ways in which we are being surveilled, which are a violation of our basic rights and freedoms. Speed cameras, okay? Local law enforcement collecting cellular data from local cell towers, drones that are being used in a variety of ways, as well as the flock camera and the Axon camera. And now we have the argument over face recognition cameras, all right? Used extensively in China. They are the backbone of their social credit system, where they can deny people goods and services if they don't meet a certain social credit score. So yes, you must conform, right? So the take-home message here, at least with this op-ed today, is that there. And also, I put a link in there, but I still have to post it. We'll do soon. There was let's see if I can find this. Give me a second. There was a meeting, a convention. Let's see. Naomi Brockwell. That's right. Naomi Brockwell. Thank God for her. Okay, so Naomi Brockwell is an activist fighting for privacy with respect to computers and networks. And I think she started to speak out about the flock cameras, but that's only the beginning because we have this deeper issue that, in a sense, kind of gets out of the reach of these cameras, and that is the use of AI. Okay, so when I say I, think databases. All right, think taking large data sets from many different sources, putting them together, and using AI as your tool for sorting through all that data and coming up with some kind of an analysis based upon the query. Now, what I'm about to say is not true necessarily of all AI large language models, but it's a point that's been raised, and it's called confirmation bias. You have a number of these LLMs that will basically reinforce and support whatever you want to assert. So, if there is an individual who believes that someone has committed a crime, they can ask questions of that large language model that will say, yes, there is something suspicious about that person. Yes, you should be taking a look at these things. And since these large language models do have the ability to acquire a lot of information in order to put together what amounts to a preliminary indictment. Okay, an AI generated preliminary indictment of a person who is under suspicion by some law enforcement official. The role that these new cameras, the Axon cameras, could have in creating the most Kafka-esque types of cases against people who are perfectly innocent is of great concern, and it needs to be investigated closely. Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever read anything by Kafka, but he certainly captured the spirit of when institutions have lost touch with the people and become these distant entities and all unto themselves. You know, it's a truth that was true. That was the way then, and it certainly is the case today. Okay, so anyway, the final point I want to make for the op-ed is that we are going to people, you, me, are going to have to form groups that are going to find ways to fight back against the surveillance state. We have to declare war on the surveillance state. Now, in the case of local government, it may be as simple, I like the way I say that, as simple a matter as having to put pressure on the local government to stop doing its part for surveillance. And believe me, I would argue that if you're being honest, local government is far more onerous, far more tyrannical, and less accountable when it comes to surveilling citizens. Okay? So that's where the war starts. Okay? And then hopefully there will be proposals for legislation that will then set up true guardrails for this stuff. I can only hope. Okay. So that's that part. And we're going to stay on this, by the way. I'm not letting this stuff rest. So, DJ Ricky, wherever you are. Okay. Now, I will have later up. If you go to yankeet.news, I'll have my stuff up in about maybe 3 hours, God willing. So, my good friend Wilm, who I would say is more on the side of Russia than Ukraine in the current conflict, sent me a link where there's this discussion from two individuals, the moderator and his guest. The guest is military. I think it says that he lived in Russia for a long time. I still need to get to the bottom of this, but it is clearly one of just a few videos that I've been able to find where you have a discussion of this conflict in depth from Russia's perspective. Now, that said, there would be an argument to be made that sometimes Russia is not its own best friend when it's making these claims. about why they're invading Ukraine and what they think is really being done to them, etc., and what the world is doing to them. That's the other hot item. Nonetheless, I think this video is important to watch. So again, like I said, by 10 o'clock, I should have it up, and you should definitely go check that out. Meantime, I have a link here concerning a video with Victor Davis Hanson about what is happening with Iran. It's a recent video. It's not a great video. Victor Davis Hanson does good work, but he's being used as a front for this guy. I don't know, Rabbi Palicki. I can't remember his name. I understand he's trying to present Israel's perspective in some fashion, but I don't like the way he does it. But it was sort of like clickbait. The argument was that we know everything Iran is planning to do. Well, okay, then what's taking so long? We know what Iran is doing. We should be able to, quote, finish them off pretty easily. That hasn't happened. Now, that said, I think in that video the point was made. It's a point I've made. I'm going to provide a rejoinder to it. And it's called Take Your Time. We have more resources than Iran. Iran is under more pressure than we realize, us just sitting here observing this. And that there would come a point in time where, let me put it this way. I think the image that's reasonable to describe the current state of Iran is watching a sandcastle slip into the sea, slowly. Little bits and pieces here in terms of civilian support, little bits and pieces in terms of their economy, little bits and pieces in terms of what they can do with shipping, little bits and pieces in terms of their control of the Hormuz Strait, are all beginning to suffer. That said, I'm the first to admit, yes, they probably still do have a lot of missiles and launchers and interceptors and drones and other fun toys. And we are confronted with a rather long, difficult journey if we're going to ultimately get Iran to give in. Now, one of the strange things that they did today or yesterday, they posted what is supposedly a recent picture of the gay Ayatollah. Now, for those who have not been, there you go, Court. There you go. Okay. The gay Ayatollah, is he dead or is he alive? Is he missing a leg or is he not? Is he incapacitated or not? What is the true story about the gay Ayatollah? Well, this is the first time, I believe, since February 28th, I believe, since there's been anything about this guy. Now, if I may, ladies and gentlemen, pardon me for making the comparison, but isn't it kind of funny that about the time that they finally decided to produce a little information about the gay Ayatollah, we finally get a release of some information about Mitch McConnell as well? You know, are they both dead or are they both alive? Or is one dead and the other alive? We don't know. Well, we would like to know. So as far as the gay Ayatollah is concerned, there is the suggestion from our friend Fauci TV that the Iranian government is setting us up for the eventual announcement that the gay Ayatollah has died. This is so odd because this is like what's been said about McConnell. We're being set up to be eventually told that he's dead. Are these things going to happen with each other about the same time? This is going to be so odd. I just don't know what to make of it. So we'll see. Hey, this is bread and butter for conspiracy theorists, but what a strange recipe. Okay, so what's the point I want to make about this? The point I started with is the point I'll end with. We're learning, President Trump is learning that yes, you can have this constant dance, what I call the dance in the desert, back and forth over trying to negotiate on the Strait of Hormuz and other things. All of that will go nowhere. I think we figured that out by now. Meantime, the other big question is how long can they hold up? We've seen this going on for quite some time now. And, I have to throw it in there, even though it's not being talked about that much. Like any group of people who are under pressure by an external force, even if you have a government that's wildly unpopular, it's your wildly unpopular government. And as they get weaker, the pressure to support them will only grow. Let's see here. AI viewers, streamblue.com. What? All right, you guys, I exposed everything in that link. You repeated yourself, Ricky. Well, I don't see it's a problem is I don't see a link here. We'll have to talk about this. Meantime, I need to move on to the other things here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is a certain amount of, I don't know, relief that comes with when someone can find the strength of character to admit, you know what? I always thought that I was one way, and now I think maybe there's a chance I'm another way. And of course, I'm referring to former NBA star Royce White, who has decided that he needs to address his inner feminine side by filing to play with the WNBA. I believe he might be the second person to have done this, but he won't be the last. So now the people running the WNBA have a problem on their hands. Here you've got guys who've decided that they identify as females because it's not your criteria. You just have to identify. No DNA test, no chromosome test, no blood test, no physical exam. I just identify as a female. That's good enough. Okay, let's bring it. I think that we're going to have to find out. And others will step in. So, yeah, this ridicules the way that the WNBA leadership has functioned. As I speak, they're having another emergency meeting. What are we going to do? Well, you might want to get in touch with reality. Just a suggestion. And speaking of reality, so now I need to bring up your friend and mine, the soon-to-be jailed Dr. Anthony Fauci. Yes, I did say it, soon to be jailed. It gets worse and worse for him with each passing day. Okay, so what came out in the news? That in his diary, since when do guys keep diaries? I mean, we keep journals, not diaries, okay? Just saying. So you people keep saying he has a diary. Doesn't sound right. In this diary of his, he claims he acknowledges that the first or second booster shot increased the risk of miscarriage significantly. Well, I submit to you, dear audience, that if you take a journey to the website dailyclout.io, I'll say it again, dailyclout.io, with our friend, the good Dr. Naomi Wolf. That's doctored English, Victorian poetry. Like her father was a poet. Just had to throw that in. She has done the homework. She managed to pull together an incredible team of experts who have worked their way through all this data that Pfizer was forced to release. And this little snippet of a comment that's been picked up from Dr. Fauci's diaries ain't nothing compared to the clinical data that shows just how horrible this has been. Can vaccines cause a Holocaust? Hell yeah, they can. Hell yes, they can. I just, wow. Okay, dailyclout.io, do your research. Or if you look for any videos by Dr. Naomi Wolf, you'll find something. So it's what we want to call this. It's like a red flag. But if you look where the red flag is planted, you're going to see a burning river of hell. So stay tuned on that one. I just seem to be picking up quite a few hot issues here. So today we have the Democrat Socialist of America. One of their louder Representatives, I believe that's Hassan Piker, basically calling for the destruction of the white race. Oh, you want to destroy the white race? Funny, you don't look black to me. Just saying, Hassan. So there you go. And the link is there. When you go up later to find it, you'll see it. And, in the same spirit, all right. Meantime, in Massachusetts, the governor, I believe, has signed a bill permitting abortions to be done up to the moment of birth. It's been a long fight over this. They were trying to pull this off in Virginia. I think they kind of fell short, so hopefully this will be challenged. But ladies and gentlemen, this kind of, see what a joke he was today. Lamont came on the radio with us today. Yeah, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to say, Ricky? Okay, you know what? You're right. And so tomorrow is the primary. So I guess we could say that Lamont's current running around is about the primary. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Wow. Okay. Meantime, I'm trying to finish this up for you folks. 1 million Americans leave the labor force. This is, I believe, over the last year or so. So it's getting worse. All right. You already had approximately 7 million. I believe that's the number, 7 million, shall we say, able-bodied people who have decided not to look for a job. And they're not recorded as being unemployed. They're just not trying. What the hell is going on? And I have another tidbit to add to that. So when Mike Rowe was on the show with Bill Maher and talking about this issue, he added that they do have a factoid about this 7 million number, some people, men who are not in the labor force. On average, they spend 2,000 hours in front of a computer screen. 2,000 hours, ladies and gentlemen, is the same as a full-time job. Just do the math. If you take 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year, you arrive at 2,000. And that's your 2,000 hours of involvement in the wrong thing. So is this men being children, being little boys, indulging themselves with whatever? Or is it something else? And how is is this a case of permissive parents allowing them to get away with this? If so, that shame on them, if that's the case. But it's a disturbing piece of information. And this, while the nation is reindustrializing, while there's a huge call for more people to get into, at least into the trades, the need's going to be there. I'm going to give you an example. Just in Connecticut alone, there was the announcement that the federal government is devoting $72 billion to electric boat in Groton, Connecticut. Okay, that's an infusion of $72 billion into the punky little state of Connecticut. And plus, just in one area of Connecticut around Groton. So thousands of people are going to be hired. There'll be pressure like you wouldn't believe on rentals and sales of houses. And God knows what else is going to come out of this. The strain on services, transportation, you name it, is going to be unbelievable. Now, in all fairness, I should point out that the spending of this money will be stretched out into the 2030s. They said, if I remember correctly, it was 14 or 16 new submarines of the Virginia and Columbia class are going to be produced by electric boat at that facility. So that's about one and a half submarines a year. That's what we're talking about. It's and who knows what's going to happen, but since then, there may be a need for more. So that is something you have to keep in mind. Meantime, I said with my part about election fraud in Connecticut. I'm going to twist a little history here. Let's understand. that a tyranny must have certain tools in order to remain a tyranny. And one of those tools is one that should be very familiar to you. That's controlling, if that's the right word I want to use, controlling the vote. So let me set it up for you. That sweet little girl, Stephanie Thomas, our Secretary of State, would you like to know what her secret motto is? Her secret motto is, you vote, we decide. So what does that lead to? That leads to the suggestion that the state of Connecticut has for years and years needed to engage in election fraud to varying degrees in order for Democrats to remain in power. So much so, I even begin to question just how many people in the state are really Democrats. That is another discussion. In the meantime, let's see, what are we left with here? The observation that because voter fraud, election fraud is so important to the state of Connecticut, it must be a well-guarded secret. So when you start doing things like lying about someone like Melissa Ramirez, because the truth will come out and they'll get you in big trouble, that will knock out the most critical pillar for tyranny to maintain its control in the state of Connecticut. So you have to lie. And that makes me think of an old saying by my good friend Winston Churchill, when he had said, the truth can be so important that it must be protected by a bodyguard of lies. Well, I would say that's a fair description of how Stephanie Thomas is guarding the manners, plural, in which they carry out election fraud in this state. Let's see here. Stay on course about the abortion. Stay on course. Well, okay, yes. All right. How are we going to jump from Massachusetts to Pleasure Island or Club 33? We'll have to get into that later. Where are those boats going? You're too much. Okay, the fake boat. It's a selection to the Jews. I said it. No, well, we don't have that many Jews. No, you know what, Ricky, I'm not going to let you get away with that one. Currently, for the 4th District, for the Congressional District in Connecticut, we have shaping up a race between the incumbent, Mr. Jim Himes, white Goyim, and the Republican challenger, Dr. Michael Goldstein, our friendly Jewish contestant. Now, it turns out he has a son. His son's name is Jonathan. Jonathan is running for state representative. He too is a conservative. Okay? So just because you wish to apply a certain religious label to him doesn't mean he's not on our side. That is something you need to consider. So they would have nothing to do with the fake vote, but you can be assured they'd be victims of the fake vote. Yes. Sorry, Israel. So you mean Israel instead of the Jews? Yeah, this is a whole other subject. We get to discuss that later. All right, the last thing I want to bring up and call it a night is the food additive of the week. There was a very interesting article about a call for better, more rigorous studies on microplastics in lipstick. You wouldn't think it's a problem, but it's a problem. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the smaller the particle of plastic or microplastic that's in the system, the much more damage it can do. So this is a serious issue. Now, I will lock together Robert Maxwell to where we are in 2026. I will lock together Shining City on the Hill. Shout out to Patriots. Okay, JK. At least you're in there, baby. I appreciate it. The Robert Maxwell. Look, I don't know if this is the place. I've been going on for a while. We'll take that discussion offline, and then we'll figure out how we're going to talk about it online later. And the fires in Washington. Yeah, God, yes. right. Well, this is where I'm going to have to stop. I've been going on for over a half hour here, and I appreciate people hanging out. I mean, unless the audience rises up and says, keep talking, I think I'm going to stop here for now. And I think hopefully Carol and Will be here soon. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And got to figure out how I can do an even better job for next week. All right. Later. Later. That's right.